Good morning. The time is 9:01 a.m. and I'm going to begin the zoning administrative hearing for Wednesday, September 15th, 2021. I'm Wendy Hartman and I will be today's zoning administrative hearing officer. The hearing secretary for today is Rochelle Rolenka. In compliance with directives of the county, state, and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, this meeting is live streamed and closed to in-person public attendance. Meeting procedures are subject to change pursuant to guidelines related to social distancing and minimizing person-to-person contact. You may make public comments during the live meeting, and registration opens when the agenda is posted 72 hours prior to the meeting date. You can dial 916-875-2501 to provide contact information. In addition, written comments can be sent to the board clerk at saccounty.net. And let's see. And the meeting is also streamed live through the Blue Jeans events. If you could read the first item into the record, Ms. Rolenka, that would be appreciated.
Certainly. The first item is to approve the action summary from August 18, 2021.
I have reviewed the action summary from that meeting and I approve as proposed.
Okay, thank you. Would you like me to go ahead and read item 2?
Yes, please.
Okay. So item 2 is Sacramento Truck School at Southgate Industrial Park. It's located 3401 and 3407 51st Avenue, approximately 1,200 feet west of the intersection of Franklin Boulevard and 51st Avenue in the South Sacramento community. The request is a use permit and design review. And
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to staff for their report.
Good morning. This is David Ulrey, Associate Planner, the project planner for this project. I did just want to confirm that the applicant is on. Dane, are you here? I didn't see you on the presenters list. I think it might be the 209 number.
David, this is Dennis Smith. I'm online.
Perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
I'm on the phone.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I'll proceed with my presentation then. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the project's located at 3407 51st Avenue, approximately 1,200 feet west of the intersection of Franklin Boulevard and 51st Avenue in South Sacramento. Existing conditions include parking and landscaping and an unpermitted 440 square foot modular building that has been conditioned to attain building permits through this process. Next slide, please. Community context. So the property is located in the M1 zoning district and is surrounded by M1 industrial uses with a warehouse to the north, a vacant property to the east, warehouse and truck terminal to the south, and industrial development to the west. Next slide, please. So site history, the site's original development was agricultural residential uses, with the western parcel having demolition of that residential use in the 1960s. In the 1970s, the eastern parcel's residence was demolished. And then between the 1970s and 2011, the property remained vacant, with a charter bus company beginning to use the property in 2011 for bus storage and maintenance. In 2013, site improvements, including parking lot, bus parking stalls, landscaping, and a modular office were installed. In 2017, use of the property transitioned to inoperable vehicle storage, with that use ending in 2019. Next slide, please. So the request is a use permit to allow a private truck driving school within the M1 zoning district, as well as a design review to comply with the countywide design guidelines. Next slide, please. So here we have the site plan. So no new improvements are proposed other than legalizing the existing modular. Modular that was part of the prior bus tunnel was removed in 2017. So as I previously stated, there is a condition of approval to legalize this, this modular. Next slide, please. And so the landscape plan, they are being conditioned to comply with the prior approved landscape plan and bring the property up into compliance with that. Next slide, please. So advisory recommendations, the South Sacramento CPAC did meet on July 21st, 2021, and unanimously recommends that the ZA approve the requested entitlements. And the DRAC also met on June 24th and recommends that the project be found in substantial compliance with the countywide design guidelines. Next slide, please. The project analysis, the project's consistent with the general plan, community plan, and zoning code as conditioned. It's compatible with surrounding industrial zoning and land uses, and no significant environmental concerns have been identified. Some key conditions for the project is a maximum of 10 students are being conditioned to be permitted on site at a time. Driving instruction is not to be permitted on 51st Avenue with the exception of students accessing the subject property. The semi-trucks are not to be parked along the public right of way, and the existing unpermitted modular shall obtain permits from the Building Permits and Inspections Division. Next slide, please.
Didn't look like there's anything moved. Okay.
So staff recommends that the zoning administrator recognize exempt status of the request under section 15322 of CEQA, approve the use permit subject to the findings and conditions found in attachment 2, and find the project consistent with the countywide design guidelines subject to the conditions of attachment 2. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions, and the applicant team is also in attendance.
Thank you, David. I don't have any questions for staff at this time. I would like to make an announcement. If you are not currently speaking, could you please make sure that your device is muted so that we can avoid background noise. With that, I would like the clerk to administer the oath and open the public hearing for this first item.
Certainly. Please raise your right hand and the appropriate response is, I do. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth? So help you God. If you do not swear, do you so affirm?
If the applicant or anyone who plans on speaking on this matter could please affirm.
Vicky Haygood.
Dennis, I think you're representing the applicant team, correct?
Yes, and I think Dane may have also called in. So I'm sorry, is there something I need to do?
Yes, if you're going to provide testimony, you need to be sworn in.
Okay, I am not.
Sir, are you going to answer any questions on the project? You need to.
Well, okay, yeah, procedurally, I don't know your process. So yes, if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. Does that mean I need to be sworn in?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, all right. Well, that's fine. What do I need to do?
Just affirm that you've taken the oath.
Okay, yes, I affirm that.
Thank you. I don't have any questions at this time for the applicant. Do you have anything you would like to present or add that staff did not provide?
I do not at this time.
Okay. Ms. Rolanka, do we have any public comments on this item?
No public comments at the moment.
All right, then I will close the public hearing. with that, I do feel that this is a good reuse of this project site, so it's good to see it being redeveloped. And I would like to recognize the exempt status of the request under section 15322 of the CEQA guidelines. I'm going to approve the use permit subject to the findings and conditions provided in attachment 2, and I find the project in substantial compliance with the design guidelines subject to the findings and conditions. There is a 10-day appeal period for this item, and the Board of Zoning Appeals fee is $3,935. Could you please read the next item in?
Certainly. Item 3 is Chipotle at Arden Manor Marketplace, located at 3308 Arden Way, on the south side of Arden Way at the southwestern corner of the intersection of Arden Way and Professional Drive in the Arden Arcade community. Request is for special development permit and design review. The environmental document is exempt.
Good morning. This is David again, the project planner for the Chipotle at Arden Manor Marketplace project. Wanted to confirm that the applicant's on. Bruce, are you?
Yes, but Bruce Ottolini here and also Daryl Ragland.
Perfect. Okay, with that, I'll proceed with the presentation. Next slide, please. So the project's located at 3308 Arden Way at the southeastern corner of the intersection of Arden Way and Professional Drive within the Arden Arcade community. Existing conditions, the site is on a vacant pad within the Arden Manor Marketplace Center. Next slide, please. So the project's located in the LC zoning district and is surrounded by office and retail uses. Next slide, please. Site history. So the Arden Manor Marketplace was developed in the late 1950s and early 1960s. In the mid-1960s, the subject pad was developed as a gas station and was demolished in the mid-1980s. In 1989, the shopping center was redeveloped and the subject pad has remained undeveloped since. Next slide, please. So the request is for a special development permit to allow the project to deviate from the minimum stacking lane requirements for drive-throughs, as well as the stacking lane landscaping requirement. The project proposes a 140-foot stacking lane versus the 180-foot requirement, and the landscaping, they propose 20 feet rather than the 25-foot requirement. The project also requests a design review to determine compliance with the Sacramento County countywide design guidelines. Next slide, please. So here we have the site plan. They do include outdoor seating, and one of the justifications for the reduced landscape setback is to get that seating closer to the street. Next slide, please. Here we have the landscape plan. Next slide. And here are the elevations. So during the DRAC meeting, the DRAC did request that additional articulation be included. So this is the result of that discussion. They modified the roof parapet above the Chipotle sign on the north elevation. Originally it was flat straight across. Now they've added additional roof height and variation. Next slide, please. So advisory recommendations. The Arden Arcade Community Planning Advisory Council did meet on June 24th and recommended approval of the project unanimously. And the Design Review Advisory Committee met on June 10th and recommended that the project be found in compliance with the countywide design guidelines with the modification that I just discussed being made. Next slide, please. So project analysis, the project is consistent with the general plan, community plan, and zoning code as conditioned. The project is compatible with surrounding commercial and office zoning and uses, and no significant environmental concerns have been identified. A key condition that has been added is that the drive-through be limited to order ahead, pickup only. So really the justification for the reduced drive aisle stacking is the concept, they call it the Chipotle lane. And so you have to order ahead through an app. So there's no on-site ordering that takes place in the drive-through. It's a pickup only. And DOT has reviewed this and found it to be acceptable. Next slide, please. So staff recommendation. Staff recommends that the zoning administrator recognize exempt status of the request under section 15303 of CEQA, approve the special development permit subject to findings and conditions, and find the project in substantial compliance with the countywide design guidelines. Next slide. And so that concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions, and the applicant is also here.
All right, thank you. Ms. Malanka, could you go back to slide 7 for me? I do have a couple questions for staff and the applicant. Thank you. David, could you please tell me which direction they are entering the drive-through at? Is it from the area closest to Arden Way or the other side?
Yes, that's correct. It's the area closest to Arden Way. So they'll come in, they'll drive through the parking lot and access through the entrance closest to Arden Way, and then come out to the, I guess that would be the south.
Okay. And then I know in the staff report you talked about the project itself meeting the parking requirements. It did look like some of the existing parking was being eliminated or modified with the addition of this building. And so I wanted to make sure that the overall center still parks correctly.
It does. There's a shared parking agreement, and they are significantly overparked for the center. They did eliminate a couple spaces on the western side of the building, but they're still meeting the requirements for the overall center.
Perfect, thank you. That's all the questions I have for staff at this time. Ms. Malanka, if you could administer the oath for this item and open the public hearing. Thank you.
Certainly. The oath, please raise your right hand and the appropriate response is I do. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, so help you God? If you do not swear, do you so affirm?
I do. I do.
All right, thank you. Do the applicants have any additional information that you would like to add that was not presented by staff?
Not at this time.
Okay. I did have one question, and so I know that the drive-through is just for pre-orders, but I wasn't completely clear on the type of signage or what's kind of being done in order to ensure that someone doesn't just pull into the drive-through thinking that it's a typical drive-through lane where they can order.
Yes, the Chipotle model for this is that if somebody does come in and wants to order from the drive lane, they will be asked to pull around to the front of the building and park, place their order, and then when they are notified, can then drive through the drive-through and pick up only.
Okay. Is there signage prior to entering the drive-through letting them know that it's pre-orders only?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And hopefully people pay attention to that. Okay, that is all the questions I have for the applicant. Were there any public comments or public waiting to speak on this item?
No, there are currently no public comments at the moment.
Thank you. With that, I will close the public hearing. My motion is to recognize the exempt status of the request under section 15303 of the CEQA guidelines, approve the special development permit subject to the findings and conditions included in attachment 2 of the staff report, and I find the project in substantial compliance with the design guidelines subject to the findings and conditions. As previously mentioned, there is a 10-day appeal period, And the fee for filing an appeal is $3,935. Moving on to item 4, if you could read that into the record.
Certainly. Item 4 is Haygood Cargo Containers, located at 2860 Alberta Road on the southwest corner of Alberta Road at Scotland Drive in the Antelope community. Request is for special development permit and design review. The environmental document is exempt.
Please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Emma Patton, staff planner for the Haygood Cargo Containers project. I'll be presenting the project for you this morning. This project was last considered by the zoning administrator on April 21st. At that time, the request only included the special development permit and the design review. However, the zoning administrator requested that the applicant also include the minor use permit request with the application and that the item be continued to a later date pending the incorporation of that minor use permit into the request. Since then, the applicant has submitted the minor use permit application and staff has reviewed the application, performed the public outreach process for that minor use permit application and has since incorporated that request into the report to be presented to you today. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this project is located at the southeast corner of Alberta Road and Scotland Drive in the Antelope community. There is an existing single-family residential community to the south and west, and a proposed single-family residential community to the north. There's also a commercial shopping center just to the east. Next slide, please. The request includes the minor use permit to allow 7 cargo containers on a 1.89 acre property in the AR5 zone. These are 7 existing cargo containers. The minor use permit is requested to allow them to remain on the property. The request also includes a special development permit to allow 2 of those containers to encroach into the required side street yard area and a design review to comply with the countywide design guidelines. Next slide, please. I'm going to roll through a few site photos for you to give some context of the project site. Here's the existing condition of the property from Scotland Drive. There's an existing wall along Scotland Drive, and the existing containers, along with other accessory structures, peek over the existing wall. Next slide, please. Here's one of the cargo containers along Scotland Drive. The wall itself is about 8 feet tall, and the containers, which are on leveling pads, are approximately 9 feet tall. Next slide, please. Here's another accessory structure on the property. I show this only to note that it appears that this is an unpermitted accessory structure visible from Scotland Drive that may require removal or permitting. For whatever reason, the structure is not shown on the site plan, so I just wanted to make note of that here. Next slide, please. Here you can see the relationship between the accessory structure just mentioned and the second cargo container, which is located, again, in that side street yard area. Next slide, please. And here's the view of that second cargo container peeking over the wall. Next slide, please. This is a photo of the existing wall. As I understand, the property owner has since performed a repair on this portion of the wall and provided documentation to the zoning administrator. Next slide, please. This is the site plan provided by the applicant. Scotland Drive is at the bottom of this visual and north is to the right. According to the zoning code, 1 cargo container is allowed on an ag-res property so long as the property is a minimum of 2 acres in size. This property is less than 2 acres at 1.89 acres. And so no cargo containers are permitted by right, and all 7 cargo containers require the minor use permit. There are certain use standards which must be met for the cargo containers. Amongst those requirements is a requirement that cargo containers only be located in the rear and side yard areas, and therefore would not be allowed in the front or side street yard areas. The applicant, though, is requesting the special development permit to allow 2 of the 7 containers to be located within that required side street yard. I will note that since this project was last presented to the zoning administrator, the applicant has provided a new site plan. The prior site plan appeared to indicate that the wall was on the property line and the cargo containers were 16 inches from the wall. However, the revised site plan indicates that the wall is 3 feet from the property line and the cargo containers are 16 inches from the wall. So with that, the approximate setback for the 2 cargo containers within that side street yard area is about 4 feet 4 inches. However, I should note that no survey has been performed to confirm these setbacks. Next slide, please. Thank you. The applicant proposes to paint the cargo containers this color here. It's sort of a light, like grayish tan color, it appears. Next slide, please. The Antelope CPAC reviewed this proposal during their March 2020 meeting. And during that meeting, there was a failed motion to approve the project, which resulted in a denial. The CPAC was provided a number of letters of opposition from neighbors who were concerned with the request. Their concerns cited maintenance concerns, concerns related to visibility and the aesthetics of the cargo containers. The Design Review Advisory Committee also reviewed this project and recommended that the project be found in substantial compliance with the countywide design guidelines. Next slide, please. Thank you. The staff is recommending that the zoning administrator deny the minor use permit request and the special development permit request. There are 10 findings which must be made for the zoning administrator to approve the minor use permit. Staff's review concluded that 3 of these findings cannot be made. The first requires compliance with use regulations. While if the special development permit is approved, the cargo containers may be allowed in the side street yard area. The use standards also require screening through fast-growing evergreen shrubs or fencing. And the reduced setback does not allow for landscape screening in addition to the wall that would further screen the containers from Scotland Drive. And no screening is proposed in the application to screen their visibility from Alberta Road. In addition, a finding must be made that the use is compatible with adjacent uses. As I mentioned, there's single-family residential communities existing or planned to the north, south, and to the west, and the utilitarian nature of the structures would be better suited in an area adjacent to other agricultural residential properties. And even in that instance, it would be preferred that the structures be placed away from adjacent neighbors. In addition, the proposed use is not compatible with the scale of the site. If the site was 2 acres in size, 1 cargo container would be allowed on the property. But given the size is 1.89 acres, it may be more appropriate to consider 1 or 2 cargo containers. However, the 7 cargo containers are not compatible with the size of the site. Lastly, in regards to the minor use permit, a finding must be made that the adequate measures have been taken to reduce the negative impacts on neighboring residents. The cargo containers are proposed to be located near to the property boundaries shared by the neighbors, both to the south and then along Scotland Drive. And so the minimal setbacks, again, do not make it feasible to provide that additional screening to reduce the impact of those containers. Similarly, there are also findings which must be made to approve the special development permit. Staff's review concluded that 3 of the 7 findings cannot be made. The first relates again to compatibility with surrounding uses. The utilitarian cargo containers on the Acre site are not compatible with the denser suburban single-family community located surrounding the property. In addition, the proposed development is not of a sufficient size to create a desirable environment within its boundaries, and the project design is not justified by the proposed deviation. The minimal setback cannot accommodate additional screening features or design features that would lessen the visual impact of the cargo containers, and there are no additional design enhancements proposed to justify their location. Lastly, the site offers alternative locations for the cargo containers that may be more suitable. So again, based on this analysis, staff is recommending denial of the project request. That does conclude my presentation. I am available for questions, and the applicant and property owner, Vicki Haga, is also on the line this morning.
Thank you. At this time, I don't have any questions for staff, but I would like to thank you for the very well-written and comprehensive staff report, particularly with regard to your analysis of the required findings. With that, I would like to have Ms. Berlanca administer the oath and open the public hearing.
Certainly. Please raise your right hand and the appropriate response is I do. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, so help you God? If you do not swear, do you so affirm?
I do.
All right. Ms. Hagwood, do you have anything that you would like to add that staff did not cover?
This is Emma Patton. I'm just seeing that it looks like Vicki Haygood may have left the meeting. Maybe we can give her a moment to rejoin.
Hello, can you hear me?
We
Hello?
can hear you now. Ms. Hagwood, yes, we can hear you now. You sound
Okay, I had to
clear.
get on my phone because it wasn't working on my iPad.
Perfect. Yeah, there's no longer an echo. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Do you have anything you would like to present?
Yes, the one thing that staff kept saying was that it wasn't compatible with surrounding uses and mentioned that the homes around me. But the thing is that on the other side of my wall is Walmart, and there's a bunch of containers there. So I'm kind of in a mixed situation. Also, I want to reiterate the fact that I've had some of these containers on the ones on the wall on that location for 20 years, and then other ones for 8 to 10, which is previous to any kind of code for these containers. And I also, I was told by Jessica Brandt that since I had an 8-foot block wall, the setback could not be used, and enforcing it would not be the best use of my property. And she's the one that suggested that I apply for this special development permit. The other thing I wanted to bring to the attention is that not all parcels have the same restrictions. For instance, I have a 55-foot right-of-way on the north side, which is Alberta Road, but the development next to me has a 75-foot right-of-way. And so I'm just trying to, they keep saying, well, it's a 12.5-foot setback, side street setback, and all parcels have that. But I know for a fact that all parcels are not the same, just like I have a gate at the rear of my property that a street dead ends to, and that's not allowed in Sacramento County, but the Board of Supervisors approved it. And I'm also thinking that since the wall was built at the same time that Walmart was built and the street was put in, Walmart had to build my wall, that the side street setback was not enforced at that time because of the situation of them, building it. My mom went to Walmart. She went to all the Board of Supervisors and said, hey, I want this wall here. So that kind of negated the 12.5-foot side street setback. And at the last meeting, one thing that was brought up several times is because of the proximity of the containers to the wall, that there was a maintenance issue. And I do believe that you have the pictures where I showed that all the repairs have been done to the wall, so that is not an issue. I also want to bring to your attention that when we were at the CPAC meeting, Emma told them that the DRAC had recommended against the containers because they didn't meet the situation, which was not actually correct. So I requested another DRAC meeting, and they, said yes, it did meet their requirements. And screening, the wall pretty much screens the containers, and the 1 foot that you could see, I will be painting them the same color as the wall, and it will blend in. And when she said about alternate locations on my property, if I were to relocate the containers from the wall, which is actually next to Walmart, to another location, then they would be moving closer to the homes. So I don't, and it wouldn't be easier access for me. I wouldn't be able to get to them in the wintertime when it rains, and so it's all muddy and they would sink. Let's see. I do request that you approve the special development permit and the minor use permit to allow me to keep all my containers, including the 2 that are next to the wall. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this item?
There are currently no public comments on this item at the moment.
Or I should clarify that, no public wanting to speak. We do have public comments in the record. So I just want to clarify that. Sorry about that. All right, so I am going to go ahead and close the public hearing on this item. So while I do understand that the cargo containers and this property have been in existence for quite a long time, this property is located in an area that the county has identified for urban growth, as is demonstrated by the surrounding single-family homes that are currently developed and still in the process of being developed surrounding the property. And I do agree with you, Mrs. Hagwood, that there are different standards for different types of uses. And that is why in our chapter 3 for cargo containers, we do discuss the difference between the more typical single family properties, AR properties over 2 acres, and commercial properties. And they do all have different standards for cargo containers. And so Walmart, being compared to you, is not an apples to apples comparison. It is a commercial property. Your property is more in line with residential, since the primary use of the property is residential, while being a larger property than the surrounding area. I do agree with staff and the neighbors that the number of cargo containers in combination with accessory structures, et cetera, on the property does seem a bit excessive and is providing visual and aesthetic issues in the neighborhood and not consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. That being said, I also agree with staff's analysis that the property is just under 2 acres, and given the size of the property and history of cargo containers on the site, that it may be appropriate to allow for a couple of cargo containers, but definitely not 7 cargo containers. I'm most concerned with the 2 cargo containers that are within the setback area for a couple of reasons. While Department of Transportation may not have any immediate plans to widen Scotland Drive, as the surrounding area continues to develop with urbanized uses, it still is designated for potential widening at some point in time. And therefore, I don't believe locating structures or providing permission for structures to be there permanently, even with a recorded agreement to remove at such time as the road is widened, would be appropriate. I believe that these are also the containers that are probably most visible and causing the most concern for folks living in the area. Therefore, I'm going to deny the request for the special development permit. I will approve the minor use permit, but with several modifications. The maximum number of cargo containers that will be allowed will be 2, and adequate screening must be provided for those cargo containers along Scotland Road and potentially to the south of the property. So looking at the site plan, those 3 containers that are closest to the property lines are definitely ones that should be removed from the property, which means there's 4 remaining cargo containers, which I will allow you to work with staff on which 2 will remain, as staff will need to come back to the zoning administrator with conditions for me to review and approve regarding the containers that would remain, along with required screening for those containers. So my final action is that I am recognizing the exempt status of the request under CEQA, section 15301. I am denying the special development permit as requested, approving the minor use permit with the modifications I just discussed, but requiring the item to come back to a future hearing so that I can review and approve conditions of approval for the 2 remaining cargo containers. I would like to ask staff about how long it would take you. I don't know if you'll be able to make the next meeting, or if you need slightly more time to prepare revised conditions and come back to the zoning administrator.
Yeah, so Zoning Administrator Hartman, this is Chris Pahuli, Principal Planner. Just wanted to kind of clarify a couple things. So one, sounds like you're perhaps not approving the minor use permit, but providing direction to staff to return to you with the appropriate findings, and also with the direction that you just provided to enable you to approve the minor use permit. I just wanted to make sure that I was correct in understanding that you're not approving the minor use permit right now, but rather providing direction to us to come back to you with the appropriate findings, as well as taking into consideration the direction that you just provided to kind of rework the project, if you will, in a manner that you can approve it. I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
Oh yeah, thank you. I do believe that's a better clarification. So for now, yes, I am not taking final action on the minor use permit, but directing staff to come back with revisions as I've discussed.
Perfect. And then I will perhaps defer to Emma. I'm assuming that it'll probably take, I would think, maybe a month or so, but I'm going to defer to Emma just to talk about timing and bringing it back.
Yeah, I think I agree that a month is
as well. So
sorry, I missed that. I was just going to say that I think that the month timeline would probably be more reasonable. We will not be able to make it for the October 6th zoning administrator hearing.
Okay, so if I continue this to date certain of October 20th. That way we don't have to redo the legal notice.
Yeah, October 20th should work.
Okay. We'll put it on the agenda for October 20th, and we can always continue to date certain from there.
Perfect.
All right. I'm sorry, Ms. Haywood, I think you were trying to make a comment. The public hearing is closed, but I will allow you to comment.
So am I supposed to work with Emma on what happens next? As far as I'm going to need some time to figure out what I'm supposed to do with all my belongings that are in these containers that I have to get rid of.
So correct. So you will work with Emma on deciding which of the 2 of the 4 interior containers that you'll be keeping. And as part of that, there will be conditions of approval for a timeline of removing the different cargo containers. So please work with staff on that. They will try to accommodate you, but we do need to show progress in moving forward for compliance. And then they will they'll prepare conditions, which you will have an opportunity to review before coming back to me for formal action.
Okay.
All right. With that, I am closing item number 4.
Zoning Administrator Wendy Hartman, this is Alma from the clerk's office.
Sure.
So I just wanted to get some clarification for our record that you denied the special development permit, correct? And you are continuing the minor use permit to October 20th.
That is correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize. My recommendation was probably lengthy and convoluted. All right, so item 4 is closed, and it's my understanding that item 5 for 6815 Stanley Avenue has been continued. So with that,
it's actually been dropped from the agenda.
Okay. So no date certain for that. All right, perfect. Thank you.
And Administrator Wendy Hartman, you need to actually drop it from the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. So I am dropping item PLNP 2021-00053 6815 Stanley Avenue Pool House from the September 15th, 2021 zoning administrative hearing agenda.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on to item number 6, Sacramento County fiscal year. Is there a staff person or presentation for this?
This is Chris Pahuli. I guess I can do this.
Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no worries. So the material in your agenda packet provides a summary of the 2021-2022 annual budget. I understand that you are likely familiar with this document.
Yes.
And as you likely know, we are doing presentations to all of the boards and commissions, including the zoning administrator, to get input on priorities for the 2022-2023 budget in establishing a outreach program as well as a survey to get input from the broader public on the 2022-2023 budget, which the county is beginning their efforts to get moving on now that the 2021-2022 budget has been approved and is currently being implemented. So the purpose of this item is to get any input from the zoning administrator on any potential input on framing up the 2022-2023 budget in terms of priorities or additional comments related to outreach and the upcoming survey.
All right, thank you very much. I do not have any comments. I do appreciate the board's efforts in trying to be more transparent with the budget process and encourage the public to participate in those opportunities. So with that, I will close that item. Are there any staff updates?
This is Chris Pahuli again. We do not have any staff updates at this time.
All right. I do not have any comments at this time. So with that, I will adjourn today's meeting. The time is 9:49 a.m. Thank you very much. Ms. Rolanka,